Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee on Monday, the 2nd of October. So we'll start with declarations of, well, actually, I should go to apologies, shouldn't I? Doesn't appear we've got any apologies. That's correct, isn't it? No apologies, everybody's present. Item 1, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest either. Item 2 is exclusion of press and public. And so this is to consider the exclusion of press and public from the meeting during consideration of Annex A to Agenda Item 6, Redundancy, Pension or Exit Discretion Report, on the grounds that they contain information relating to individuals and the financial affairs of particular persons. This information is classed as exempt under paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A to Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, as revised by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. So can I see those in favour of excluding press and public for item 6? Thank you very much. Great. And in those terms, then what I would suggest is that we move agenda item 6 over redundancy, pension or exit discretion report to the end of the meeting so that we don't have to leave and come back into session. Is everybody okay with that? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Right. Okay. So we have the minutes of the last meeting to approve. Can I see if you're in agreement with those, please? Yeah, okay, so those are approved and I'll sign those at the end of the meeting. We then have public participation and we have one speaker today, that's Gwen. And as you know, you've got 3 minutes and I won't interrupt you, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 matters. First, a growing number of local authorities are in trouble for historic and recent equal pay failures. Given our history, can you ask for a report to your next committee or an internal audit just to get some confidence we're in the right place? Secondly, members, opaque restructures continue apace and are never published, nor are the required management trees under transparency codes. This latest administration have said warm words about valuing staff and progression, which is great, as without progression options, good workers leave. I understand this is becoming quite an issue. As one example, Democratic Services, I'm told, has only entry-level grade 7 positions, then a 12, and apparently an extra 13 popped into the mix to help out top management. No one to write scrutiny reports, no one to train or supervise. That's very bad. Can you ask for a report, starting with Mr. Floyd's directorate, to investigate how widespread this practice is and where such decisions are made that hollowed out middle-level staff are eliminated, and it lets down all the staff in the process, and of course yourselves. Finally, in order to keep members informed, I think it is important to have a regular public report on employment tribunal cases won, lost or withdrawn, as these do not appear reported anywhere. One such issue, a series of employment tribunal cases against the council, involves a particularly severe unrecorded decision made, I assume, by Mr. Floyd. It seems at some point only last year, he made the decision that anyone who left the authority would no longer be entitled to receive the back pay from delayed pay negotiations. This year, for example, the award was due April 1st, and at best it's going to be available by Christmas. As the award for staff under 50,000 is likely to be £1,925 each minimum, leavers could be losing up to £1,500. I cannot imagine a more obscene decision, depriving our workers of wages they had earned, and in my book, it's stealing. Who made this decision and when? How could this Labour administration support this? Other councils that value their staff don't do this. Please ask for a public report and review. Thank you, Chair. That's it.
Thank you. You were under the 3 minutes, and thanks for those comments. And we will discuss those with Helen and the appropriate officers. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Right, okay, so our next item is item 5, workforce profile report. Helen, would you like to introduce that to us?
Sorry, yes, I can certainly introduce it. The key performance indicators that you're seeing in terms of headcount, FTE and leavers rates are all relatively comparable to last year. There are a notable number of dismissals associated with contracts ending. And sadly, we've had a number of employees who have died in service. Resignation still remains our highest reason for leaving, followed by retirement. And this is fairly consistent around the region and also nationally, but you will see that our turnover figures have remained relatively static. Pleased to report that our number of Work with York staff assignments have reduced in terms of number of placements, and also month on month the expenditure for Work with York is also reducing, most notably in adults and children's services. There remains a number of vacancies that do remain unfilled, and act upping arrangements are there, and this is all part of being able to be a fluid and flexible workforce to make sure that we can look at how we can fill roles best. But we are still experiencing recruitment to fill hard to fill posts, and we do have to do quite a bit of creative recruitment. So you will continue to see recruitment within our websites and our pages. Sickness absence figures have started to fall slowly. We've literally, just after the writing of this report, we had the figures from CIPD. We are just half a day ahead of the national average for public sector, which is in a much better position than previous years pre-pandemic. COVID-19 respiratory absences are reduced in Q1. I do actually suspect that we might have a slight upturn of that just recently. We've seen, and it's been nationally, there has been another COVID spike there, which may well come into our sickness absences. Equalities profiling remains largely the same, and we do continue to promote that our employees update their sensitive information for us. But as I've said in previous reports here, it's not something that we can actually mandate. So we continue to work with our groups, and we have a number of different groups across the council. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on any of the figures.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Helen, Councillor Ray?
I have 3, Chair, so if you want to chip around, that's absolutely fine. The first one is just what you said on that one, Helen. Did you say that was the LGA benchmark that's come back with a point about half a day ahead?
Yeah, you do.
So what is that? So is that 10.5?
11, it came back. Sorry, that's 10.5, yes, and we're 11.
Okay. Second one was around the table at the bottom of page 15. I'm a little bit confused between that one and the table on the following page. But those Q1 figures, you say agency staff is going down. The Q1 figures look incredibly high. So by Q1, we've already got 50% the number of assignments as we had for the whole of last year.
That is obviously only to date. That's 307 to date.
But that was 665 for the whole of last year.
Yes.
So we've already hit 50% of the figure of last year in Q1, which means if that continues, we will have doubled the number of assignments to last year.
I think, yeah, I can pick that one up.
You respond to that, please.
Yeah, but I don't think that'll be the case, Councillor, by the end of the year, because we'll have people that have been in place for a period of time. So you'll probably end up, I would have thought, based on the amount of assignments we've got, around about 400, 450 or so, with about new people coming in on the long-term assignments. So hopefully we'll see that reduction.
Thank you. Councillor, do you have another?
The last one was quite
question?
a quick one as well. Table on page 12, the number of staff FTEs. Adult social care and children's have remained static over the past 3 to 4 years, which I would expect because there's quite a lot of agency staff use. But customers and communities has increased 8%. at the start of that graph, place 6.6 and public health by 12%. Considering those budgets have been reducing year on year, I was surprised to see significant staff growth across those three directorates when I would have expected to see the opposite.
Do you have any comment on that at all, Helen?
Just
And the same as Helen, happy to look at the teams and actually find out where the movement's been.
Yeah.
So you've got to remember some of that is also to do with just movement of teams and responsibilities internally, and especially within customer and communities. It's an area where some staff have moved out of children and education, falling into that department. And if I was guessing, I'd see that is probably the biggest change for that.
Can I just ask everybody to speak up a bit so that the people at the back can hear, please? We're not just having a conversation around the table. Okay, anybody else got any questions at all? Paula? Sorry, Councillor Widdowson.
I was fine. Helen, just I think it's a question for yourself. You said that the two main reasons are, or the main reason is resignations. Do we have an understanding what's happening regarding the resignations? Is it going to a better paid job? Is it moving across the country? What's the rationale behind that?
There's a variety of rationales. Yes, promotion, not both locally and further afield as well. We've had quite a few people retire. As I say, we've got retirement within there. Changing careers, we're actually seeing quite a bit of again at the moment. So when I've been looking at some exit surveys, people have been saying about changing careers as well. And again, it's something that they can do. But there's no one consistent people driving out purely because people often say it's pay. It's not always pay. It's potentially location. So there is a variety, and I wouldn't want to say that there's a consistent right across the board.
Would it be worth having a discussion on that at some point, just so that you could get to the back of what it is?
Absolutely. Yeah, would be really helpful to understand that profile in more detail if we can. Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Helen. Just on page 8, paragraph 9, we don't seem to be making much progress really in people declaring. We've got 1 in 5 staff not providing information on disability or ethnicity, and nearly a third around sexual orientation. Are we making any progress at all in getting people to disclose that information? Do we understand why they're not disclosing?
It's something that actually one of our staff groups has taken up for us to be able to try and understand the reasons why. It's not, as I say, it's not mandatory. People don't have to, and that's quite often the reason why people say they won't provide. I don't need to. Why do I need to? And we can't mandate that. But we're encouraging people to do it just so we can look at we're more representative of the community and take it forward from there. But it's not something that we can mandate. Equally, if we were then going to do any kind of pay gaps in any of those protected categories, that becomes quite problemsome because we can't actually get that data and make it representative either. So we're trying to make it to have reasons why we want to try and explore that as well.
Yes, yeah, and if I can just in my capacity as chair, so we signed the anti-racist city pledge recently, and we've adopted the anti-racism strategy for the city, and an aspect of that is making sure that we are promoting diversity in our workforce, and particularly up into higher levels of the organisation. And I just notice around ethnicity, and we've said this many times between us, I believe, over the years, that the number of people identifying from BME communities is static, essentially, within the organisation. And I think that we really need to have a look at what we're doing and how we're going about it in order to try and change those numbers so that we do start to reflect the York representation, which I think is actually slightly low there, 10%. It's slightly more than that now. So, but this is a piece of work I think that we recognise that the organisation needs to do, and I think we're all committed to doing that. So that will come over time, I hope. Councillor A, you had another question?
There's a quick follow-up on Councillor Kilbane's comment, because I was going to ask something similar. Are we doing anything actively around answering that why question to people? Because I think one of the issues I've had in my past work history as well is actually getting that message across to people of what the value is, getting to understand why we're actually collecting that data. you get much better response rates than people just assuming. It's sort of a natural reticence. People think, well, you're just hoovering up my data for the sake of it. Whereas actually, you can have those conversations with them, a bit of education to say, it's really important we have this data for the following reasons. This is what we use it for anonymously to make sure that conditions are right for those individuals, etc.
Yes, we have done that with our staff group, and that's something else that they're taking forward as well for us. So it's not just coming from corporate management team, from HR, etc. Because we said that was one of the really important things. It isn't just for HR data, for workforce data. It's for all of our employees and it's for everybody. So we're trying that angle at the moment. Yeah,
It's one of those you just need to really keep hammering the message back.
keep doing it. Yeah,
Pay slips and things like that, and any communications that go out really telling the
Yeah.
importance of
so
having
we're
that data.
promoting Black History Month. And again, to me, that's another opportunity that we can actually look and reinforce our commitment as well. So yes, we are looking at different angles.
And I'm quite interested in the data on page 16, spread of long-term assignments and current assignments with work with York across the directorates. And we know that this is a big spend area for us, that directors are trying very hard to bring down, and place continues to be slightly stubborn. I know when you compare it to the FTE comparison, it's not hugely ahead of other directorates, but I'm just wondering what's going on within place in the sense of trying to make sure that that's a focus area for them as well, to minimise their cost on agency workers. Thank you.
Every month it's challenged, agency is challenged at a DMT and at a directorate level, and they are currently looking at a number of long-term agency placements within there to try and make them permanent roles. But largely there's quite a lot of them that are niche roles that we are struggling to recruit with. So those agency placements continue. We've had a couple of roles that haven't been successful in being recruited, hence why they are continuing on an agency basis, because they are roles that we do need to fulfill. And again, they're quite niche skills. So we do that in terms of a risk assessment as well, of what should we do if this post was just deleted. And obviously they're challenged on that basis as well. But appreciate that place has a number of discrete roles in there.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Does anybody else have any further questions on this report at all? No. Okay, great. Well, thank you for that, Helen. And it's noted, and also I think areas for thought and consideration moving forward. And a report to come back to us about the people that are resigning and why, as close as we can get, because I imagine we don't always know the answer to that either. But there we go. We won't worry about that too much. Yeah. Right, so we're leaving item 6 to the end of the meeting. We're on to 7 changes and updates relating to chief officer posts. So Ian, do you want to speak to that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just introduce it briefly, and then Helen may want to say a bit more. So this report deals with 3 particular issues. First is some additional responsibility allowances for the Chief Finance Officer. Second is a change in respect of the role of Assistant Director of Education to change their title. And the third is the update from the recent recruitment campaigns regarding the Director of Public Health and the Assistant Director of Public Health. Just on the first one, in terms of the Chief Finance Officer, that proposal reflects the work they have done in respect of leading the finance work stream for creating the combined authority, and also reflects the fact that they will continue to do that work, including acting as the interim finance officer for the combined authority for a short period of time once the combined authority is set up. And that will be in place until such time as the combined authority recruits for their proposed director of resources. The second one, I think, is self-explanatory. And just on the third area in terms of Director of Public Health. So as the report says, an appointment has been made for a new Director of Public Health. Unfortunately, we weren't able to appoint for the Assistant Director of Public Health. I'll stop there in case Helen wants to add anything else.
Chair, I think the rest of the report covers the details, so happy to take any questions. In terms of financial for the Chief Finance Officer, there is no impact to the council because that's been picked up by the combined authority. There's no financial impact obviously on the Assistant Director of Education, and noting the recruitment changes for Director of Public Health and Assistant Director, and obviously we've carried that vacancy of the Assistant Director of Public Health since the substantive post holder left in April. So, and we're currently looking at different ways of what we can do.
Thank you. Anybody with any questions? Councillor Eyre.
A couple of relatively quick ones. So the first one is that reference on page 33, paragraph 20, to the 2 days that the finance officer is doing for North Yorkshire. We're not renowned as an organisation that's massively well staffed and has a lot of resource. It's just my concern being, do we actually have the backfill capacity to be able to cover for the officer while she's doing those 2 days?
Yeah, we can manage that. We wouldn't be proposing it if we didn't think that could be managed. It is a stretch, and that's why certainly it's not a long-term proposal that we are setting out. Clearly, we hope that there's an end date. The role is supported in terms of doing the combined authority aspect, is supported by some staff at North Yorkshire as well. And the combined authority in terms of a LEP and CA are also looking at having some additional support as well, which would come in to actually, which would be funded from the CA. So we're content there is that support, and we don't think it is a particularly significant risk at this point in time.
So if we're recharging those 2 days, we're not reinvesting that. That's in essence a saving of 2/5 of that salary.
But there is, if you look, I mean, I haven't got the figures to hand, but in terms of, there's a number of pieces of work that we have been doing. That includes HR as well, other support and policy support. All of that work, where the work has been done for the combined authority, has been recharged back to the combined authority. And I think that information was actually in the most recent paper that went to the joint committee. That shows you how much we have recharged across into that, and it's quite a significant figure from York. Actually, I can't recall the figure, but it is quite a significant figure we have recharged, which has been met from the setup costs fund, and then if and when the combined authority is created, that will continue for a period of time.
And the second one, which is a straightforward, cynical question, is the education one that says so no financial thing. Why is that? Is it just an anomaly that we have a different title in that particular one, or?
Quite an old-fashioned title. It's about aligning with the other colleagues across the region. It was requested by both the manager and the post holder, so it is just a job title change.
Thank you. Councillor Widdowson.
I'm just building on what Councillor Eyre said about the Chief Financial Officer. Just a couple of questions. Can we look into how we're putting back those extra 2 days into CYC? Because I don't believe for a moment that Debbie can do the CYC job for 3 days, or the Chief Financial Officer for 3 days a week. That just seems to be very tight. So just, if we can understand that bit. And my other bit is, what is the risk going forward of, I know that the job at the combined authority will be advertised and promoted, but what is the risk, in your opinion, going forward for that? And how do we mitigate that risk in order that we recruit either the right person if that person leaves, or we keep hold of the person? They're the two things that came to me from that paper.
Yeah, so in terms of support, in terms of reviewing what Debbie needs, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation, and clearly, we have a financial position for council, but absolutely it's an ongoing conversation, and this wouldn't be coming forward
she in particular didn't think that she could manage that process. She's got a very good team behind her as well. The issue in terms of risk you raise is, I mean, without getting to the specifics of this post, which I don't think we should necessarily get into, it will always be a risk in terms of whether people choose to, but you know, that risk has existed previously with North Yorkshire Council. That is a risk. We lose a number of staff to North Yorkshire. The creation of a combined authority adds 1 or 2 additional jobs into the mix in terms of the potential for certain people who work at York who may potentially go into that. So that risk has always been a risk, not specific just to this role.
Okay, anybody else? No, okay. In that case, then can I ask that you show your vote for the recommendations requested to approve 2 temporary additional responsibility allowances to the Chief Financial Officer, first from April 2023 to December 2023, for reasons associated with leading the finance work stream and being accountable for the finances, the creation of the mayoral combined authority is detailed in paragraphs 14 to 20A. The second is the second temporary additional responsibility allowance from January 2024 for the interim role of Section 73 officer for the combined authority, which has been approved by the Devolution Joint Committee. This is envisaged to be for approximately 3 months or until the appointment of the permanent director of resources is recruited to. Item 3, approved to change the job title of the current Assistant Director of Education to Chief Education Officer, as detailed in paragraphs 21 to 22. And 4, note the update on the recruitment and appointments panel outcome for the post of Director of Public Health, Assistant Director of Public Health, and approve the interim arrangements proposed as detailed in paragraphs 23 to 26. Can I see those in agreement with those? Thank you. So that's unanimous. Thank you for that. All right. Our next item is item 8, which is appointment of Corporate Director of Adults and Integration and associated interim arrangements. Is this yours, Ian?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, hopefully the report is fairly self-explanatory. The current Corporate Director of Adult Services and Integration has secured another role in another council. So we are just seeking the authority to go out and to recruit that post on a like-for-like basis. So hopefully it is fairly straightforward. I don't know if Helen wants to add anything else.
And then just the interim arrangements. Just looking for some interim arrangements as detailed in paragraph 14. So the current director of adult safeguarding will look at filling the role of the DAS, which is the Director of Adult Social Care, as a statutory post in that interim period. We don't know when that interim period is, but if we can get approval, we will try and recruit as soon as possible and take it from there. And we're looking at North Yorkshire resourcing undertaking this because they've just recently had experience of recruiting to an assistant director in adult social care, and we will use their intelligence accordingly.
Thank you for that. Yeah, this is tremendously important in this role, isn't it? Knowing where to look for the right person, always key. Anybody have any questions or thoughts, Councillor?
A quick thought, obviously, is good luck, Helen, because it's one of the most, you said, it's one of the most important ones that we have. It's one of the most challenging ones to recruit to, and we are not one of the highest paying local authorities, as we know, across the country. So it is a really difficult one, always one to fill, I think. The question was possibly around the potential restructures happening in that department. So obviously the DAS will need to be filled. What will be the implications of filling that before that we actually get around to looking at restructuring some of the senior management posts as was in the budget?
It will still be subject to the restructure without a doubt, but we don't anticipate a great deal of changes around those areas, but it would still be subject to that. restructure, and that'll be quite clear as part of the recruitment process.
Anybody else? No. Councillor Kilbane?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask what the gap is likely to be between the current post holder leaving, the new post holder recruited? And this has always puzzled me as to why we don't have sufficient sort of notice periods that allows us to recruit into the post with a minimum sort of gap in between the two. Sometimes there's quite a large delay between the one post holder leaving and another one taking up the job in these senior positions.
Well, actually, this is an incredibly swift one because we only received a resignation literally weeks ago. So this is the first opportunity to be able to come to us. So we're going to literally try and get this post turned around very quickly. The current post holder is anticipated to leave in December. And hopefully if we can be quite swift, it's usually about a 6-week process to be able to go out to advert and appoint. And then obviously whoever we appoint naturally has usually about a 3-month notice period to serve themselves. It could be up to 3 months, an interim arrangement that we put in place, but obviously it's really important that we do have that interim arrangement in place.
Thank you. Councillor Widdowson?
Just building on what Councillor Kilbane has said, are we allowed, I don't know the way that the structures for HR work in councils, but are you allowed to put a 6-month notice period on for really senior people? Because it's what you do in business, and it's 6 months so that you can actually do the recruitment and get people through. And then if you have recruited them, you can let them go earlier.
It's a national, the national term and condition. It's something that we could change locally, but it would be subject to everybody agreeing on that. So, yeah.
Councillor Kilbane?
Just building on that, because clearly if everybody did 6 months, then we'd all be in the same boat all over again, wouldn't we? And taking 6 months for the new candidate to arrive, assuming we recruit somebody from such a senior position. Just picking up what you said, Helen, is one of the reasons for the delay could be the regularity of this committee and how often it meets, because I'm sure, you know, we could do something about that if we've got senior people who are moving on somewhere else. I'm sure we could call this committee together sooner rather than later.
Well, since it was only just received literally a week or so ago, we left it to now, but we have in the past put a special on for this situation. So that has already been considered, and we do that.
Thank you. Ian?
Yeah, I think it's just a reality that even if you act almost the day that they go, there's a period of recruitment which can take a couple of months, and there's clearly, when you make the appointment, there's a period, as Helen says, they've got 3 months notice. If you were to look at extending, you know, if you, for example, enforcing a 6 months notice locally, I think you'd have a real issue recruiting, because people, if they're going for a job, the employer, if the first thing they say, well, I've got 6 months of notice to serve, I think that may create issues. I generally think a lot of senior officers in local government would not join an authority that says you've got 6 months notice. I think it would heighten that risk in terms of them thinking, well, what happens when I go for the next job if I'm then forced to do 6 months? So it sounds great, but I think there'd be a lot of practical issues in terms of doing that.
Anybody else? Councillor Eyre?
Just a thought around that, because obviously it is national paying conditions, which we can change locally, but it's a pain to do that and it never really happens. Have any other organisations tried anything more imaginative in terms of sort of financial incentives that would suggest people work? Because you're absolutely right. It's your best case scenario is 6 weeks plus 3 months, unless you happen to find someone who's not in post, which is probably not very rare that you're going to find somebody you want who's not already in post. So you're always going to have at the best that 6 week lag. Is there any way that other local authorities have tried in terms of financially incentivizing people to stay for 4 months instead of 3 months?
Not that I'm aware of. Most people tend to try and just do their notice. Most other organisations do actually say, would you come to us sooner?
Yeah.
So it's
But that's just why, if you're saying,
but
well,
we
actually,
do exactly the same as well. Or is there any way you can shorten your notice period as well? So it's all by negotiation.
Just thought that's sort of golden handshakes. If you can say, well, actually, there's 6 weeks pay if you decide to stay that additional 4 weeks to allow us to transition, people might then go, actually, well, it's worth it for me to stay a bit longer.
And some people do give a lot longer notice as well. So
Right, are we finished with questions and such things? Good, okay, thank you, everybody. So the recommendations are on page 43. And that is 1, confirms the pay package for the vacant role to be advertised for the Corporate Director of Adult Social Care and Integration. 2, establishes an appointment subcommittee for the role to delegate sufficient powers to the subcommittee, enabling them to conduct the recruitment process, select and appoint a candidate subject to the requirements of the standing orders on appointment. 3, approves the engagement of the North Yorkshire County Council resourcing team to undertake the recruitment and selection process. And 4, approves the interim appointment of the Director of Adult Safeguarding to cover the role of Corporate Director of Adults and Integration and the statutory role, the DAS, which is the Director of Adult Social Services. Can I see those in favour of approving those? Right, so that is unanimous as well. Thank you for that, everybody. And item 9 on our agenda then is the work plan, which is on pages 45, 46. Does anybody have any comments around that, or are we happy to proceed as is, and then with anything that comes up in the interim period? Yes, great. Okay, thank you. I have no urgent business that's been notified to me. So that is the close of the public meeting, and we will stop streaming now, and then I request that press and public please leave us to talk about item 6, which is the redundancy pension or exit discretion report, and we cease streaming. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you, Chair.